West Ham's new director of football in waiting. Let's go with that, in waiting. Tim Steidten. Steidten? I don't know, but we're about to find out. I've just watched a video with Gio. He's very excited. Very, very excited. And I thought, why is he so excited? I better learn. I better find out a little bit about this guy. I heard what Gio said. I wanted to delve a little bit more into it. Find out a little bit more. Because it does seem that this guy, Tim Steidten, is going to be our new director of football. Now, this is welcome news. It's very, very welcome news. It's been broken by Fabrizio Romano. And I just think if you're going to... Well, first of all, he's a trusted news source. He's sort of the best, isn't he? He's the top one in Europe in terms of the in the nose, and he's clearly got a lot of context. He went with the breaking news on his Twitter feed, and I do believe it. Actually, I do believe it. I just think there are more glamorous names you'd make up if you wanted to make up a story and get clicks. It's just more glamorous people to go for. What do we know? We know we've been in for a director of football, or interested in getting one, for a few months now. Mark Noble's got quite a lot on his hands. He's got a job to learn, and he's dealing primarily with the academy. That's not what Tim Steidten would do. He'd very much be involved in bringing in players. Now, I've got some really, really interesting data to read to you. Gio touched on it in his video. I thought I'd delve a little bit deeper into it and just find out exactly what he does. And my word, it really is impressive. But it's been known that we wanted to bring in a director of football. The name is, what's his name? Paul Mitchell at Monaco. That's been brought up time and time again. In fact, a couple of days ago, it wasn't really news. It was rumours started spreading around that we were not going to get a director of football. There was a mini meltdown, if I'm honest. And I very much saw it online. And it was very much along the lines of we're not going to get a director of football anymore. Moyes is staying. I mentioned in my previous video, that there'd been people talking about us getting relegated next season, and I said it's just too early. We don't have any data yet. We suspect the manager might be Moyes, but we don't know what the situation is with the director of football. We don't know what players we've got in yet. And as you might remember, I said it's an awful assumption to say, well, hold on, next season we're going to be, we're going to be as bad as Luton might be. Whatever the case may be, we just don't know. Luton might invest loads of money and be brilliant. We just don't know. There's no data. The transfer window's only opened today. Granted, if we purchase a load of crap players, then I'll probably join in with that and say, hold on, well, that's a little bit of a worry. I mentioned yesterday, was it today? Whatever. It's all merging into one. I said I wasn't overly happy with maybe signing people with the age profile of Ward-Prowse and Polinia, because they were sort of 27, 28 years of age, and I was slightly concerned about that. I think if we get this guy, then all of that sort of goes away. Tim Steidten is going to look to invest in youth, and he's got a really good track record of doing it. I say the word invest. Let's deal with invest first before we get to how he highlights players. Really interesting. Again, Gio touched on this in his video, but I've actually found some really interesting data and some really interesting interviews with Steidten himself. I'm struggling over that name. I feel I want to go Steidten, but it might be Steidten. We'll find out. I've only recently, when I first started, it was Lucas Paquetá, because my friend Tony, you know my friend Tony, his wife is Brazilian, and she said as soon as we signed Paquetá, it's Paquetá, which I think it's actually a place, it's a region in Brazil that he's named after, and that's why they call it Paquetá. And then he did his welcome video, and he said, my name is Lucas Paquetá. So I went from Paquetá to Paquetá, and now I'm back to Paquetá again, mostly because of that song, if I'm honest. Anyway. So, Tim Steidten, he's 43 years of age. He was a defensive midfielder, played in the Bundesliga. He was director at Bayer Leverkusen. Before that, it was Bremen. Gio mentioned it. Todd Bowley was interested in getting him to Chelsea. He was also linked with Manchester United, Tottenham and Liverpool. I'm not going to go too heavy on that, because I actually don't think it overly matters. Here is the really interesting bit. The net spend of that club, Leverkusen, while Steidten was in charge of spending the money, the net spend was 24.25 million euros. That was the sixth most among, because Gio didn't, he thought that comparatively might be about normal in the Bundesliga. It was the sixth most amongst the 18 clubs there. Yet the value of their squad is 416 million. Basically, they've had an increase since it's been there of 58%. They're basically the 4th highest value squad in the Bundesliga, but don't spend anything like that. They're actually valued. I'm going to stop doing these stats in a minute because I think they're boring me. Actually, they're the 20th most valuable squad in Europe. Okay, now here's why this is interesting. That the value of that squad is based on they only have 25 players, but all the 19 clubs above them, who have a bigger average value of the squad, have on average 40 players. It is it's very impressive. Anyway, as Gio mentioned, they've got a huge emphasis on their data and on their scouting. This is really interesting here. So this is what Steidten had said when he was talking. I think he did an interview with somebody there who's called Simon Rolfs, not Wolves. Rolfs. There you go. Ruff. I don't know why I did that. He said, we pre-filter players in some cases, especially in markets where we can't watch every game. Gio alluded to this earlier. It's all becoming a lot more intelligent. And you can do much more with data than just tracking people's passes. For example, limb tracking can be used in the future. Limb tracking? What the hell is limb tracking? Oh, God, my arm's gone over there, but my leg's over there. I don't know what limb tracking is. I guess we're about to find out. I shouldn't mock. This is highly scientific and sensible stuff. But I did say this is a dummies guide. I didn't say dummies guide for idiots. I said I'm the idiot. I'm not saying you're the dummies. Hey, look, I don't want to insult anyone at the moment. Right, anyway. Well, not at the moment, not later. Limb tracking can be used in the future to find out how often players turn their heads to observe their environment. Shit. I mean, there's a lot of that going on, basically. This is really interesting statistical work. He went on to say, I don't want to reveal too many of the club's secrets, and you can understand this is going to be really important stuff. They want to keep their cards close to their chest. But we do think we employ data analytics in other areas where possibly other clubs don't. This allows us to identify potential players with an assurance that when they come over to the Bundesliga, they're going to be able to thrive. I think what he's saying is they're mitigating any chance that they might not come over and settle. It's quite clear. I spoke to somebody earlier who writes for a publication called This Is Anfield, and he thought that Liverpool were definitely interesting because they got a change of ownership, not a change of ownership, a change that they've basically got a committee, Liverpool, whereby they decide who comes in. They all sit down and do it by committee. It's been relatively successful, maybe not so much in terms of recruiting midfielders up until recently, you might suggest, but they're looking for a shake-up, and Steidten was approached to come in and possibly join Liverpool. So he is clearly in high demand. I think this is absolutely forward-thinking. There is no doubt about this, though, for reasons that Gio alluded to, because he did bring in Xabi Alonso. This guy will be deciding who Moyes' successor is. And I think that's really important. Look at the managers we've been looking at, Rafa Benitez and people like that. It needs a fresh set of eyes. And Gio's absolutely right in what he says, that whoever's identified this guy has done a really good job. I suspect it's Mark Noble. And if that's the case, then, he really has done a sterling job. I like the fact that he might want to come and join West Ham. I've really enjoyed this run in Europe, and we've got it again next year. But I've already heard a couple of people saying there's no way that Moyes will stick around under these parameters. Moyes is too proud. Moyes wants to do things his way. I know what you mean, but there is some evidence that bucks that trend, and that's him coming back to West Ham a second time. David Sullivan didn't want to retain him. David Moyes absolutely thought, and David Moyes has said this, Stuart Pearce said it on TalkSport, that they felt irked. They felt disrespected by not retaining the job. They were given the remit to keep West Ham up in their first stint. They did it, and they weren't retained. They were affronted by that. They both said it. So when David Sullivan came calling the second time, what did David Moyes do at that point? If he was irked, if he was affronted, did he hold a grudge? No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Was he stubborn? No. I'll tell you what he was, overrode? Whatever. Overrode, who cares? What superseded his stubbornness was pragmatism, because he thought, no, actually, I'm going to be pragmatic here. What might be best for me now is not to hold a grudge. It actually might be best for me to take this job and see what happens. David Moyes probably knows full well that West Ham are going down this route of recruiting a director of football. So pragmatically, Moyes is probably thinking, hold on, what's the best bet for me? I would imagine David Moyes got a taste for trophy winning. Why would you not? And he's probably thinking, well, hold on a second, could I go somewhere else? He probably could. He probably could go to Celtic. If he really wanted trophies, go to Celtic. But if he wanted to see out his contract and he wanted to do it with a minimum of fuss, he probably would think, okay, maybe I can live with this. Maybe they even come to agreement that David Moyes can sign a couple of his players and he will integrate some of the players who have been recommended by Steidten. I don't know. Maybe Steidten don't bring anyone in until next year or the year after. Who knows? Who knows? I really don't. But I do think this is a really good thing. I think what's going to be really important is that Mark Noble and Steidten have a really good working relationship. So actually, when a manager does say to Steidten, I need a left winger, I need a right winger, then actually he's able to say, well, hold on, we don't necessarily have to go out and buy one. There's a really good one in the academy. Something like that. That'd be really good. Anyway, there you go. I didn't know anything about him. Anything about him at all. But he brings through good players, young players. They increase in value. He works in a budget. He's got a highly scientific method for bringing players in. This is not old West Ham at all. Bringing this guy in, is it the new West Ham? I certainly hope so.